Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. As always, we have an excellent show for you today. Please, if you could, hit the like and subscribe button, and maybe, I don't usually say this, but maybe hit that bell thing. I don't know. They say that's important to do. So if you could, we always appreciate your guys' support. Please do check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. We put some updates out there whenever we publish things, or if we have any special events scheduled. It's a good way to catch us outside of the live broadcast. And of course, we also have our website, Tochnyi.info. That's where we actually put all the articles and research and maps and interactive things that we do. So if you're interested in a lot more detailed information based on what we talk about here today, we highly recommend you check out the website at Tochnyi.info. So if you guys have any questions in chat, this week we'll be happy to try to do a Q&A, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. So if you could, at any time in the broadcast, if you have a question, please do put it in chat. If you're making it for the video after the fact, put the questions in the comments. We'll do our best to answer stuff that would be relevant next week. Cool. So with that, I will go ahead and just start with the show order. Of course, this week it'll just be the news report by me. Then it'll be if Mr. Germany to Ukraine has anything this week, he'll present it, and then we'll do some open dialogue panel stuff I wanted to talk about, and then Q&A. So without any delay, I will jump to the news.
These are the main headlines as of May 25th, 2025. During the night of May 24th, a second consecutive wave of aerial strikes was reported on industrial targets inside Russia, specifically aimed at facilities linked to the defense sector. According to multiple sources, including regional officials and independent media, unmanned aerial systems originating from Ukraine targeted factories involved in the production of critical components for military equipment and munitions. One of the strikes hit the Energia plant located in Yelets in Lipetsk Oblast. This facility is notable for being the only known domestic source of guidance system batteries used in aerial munitions and advanced missile platforms such as the Iskander-M. It also supplies energy components for cruise missiles and other specialized military-grade systems. Local authorities acknowledged drone crashes in the industrial zone, confirming that the site was affected again following a prior incident the night before, which had resulted in a fire and injuries among the workforce. Residents nearby reported a sequence of loud blasts and increased aerial activity, including helicopters in the vicinity. Emergency services responded quickly, and while the governor of Lipetsk indicated there were no new injuries, unofficial accounts noted a significant disruption at the facility. Another strike targeted a chemical plant in Novomoskovsk in Tula Oblast, specifically the NAK Azot facility, a major producer of industrial chemicals and fertilizers with dual-use applications. The plant manufactures key substances such as ammonium nitrate, methanol, and argon, all of which are used in military contexts, ranging from explosive compounds to fuels and metallurgy additives for weapon systems. The attack reportedly damaged infrastructure, including an acid tank and a gas pipeline. Local officials confirmed 3 injuries and 2 hospitalizations. Community reports and plant schematics analyzed by investigative sources identified the damage across several interconnected sections of the facility. Workshops known as Ammonia 2, Carbamide 2, and Workshop 5A were reportedly affected. These areas are situated in close proximity and are responsible for handling high-risk chemical processes. Following the strikes, the authorities stated that health and environmental teams were dispatched to examine the potential contamination risks and assess the condition of the site. Ukrainian drones targeted the Bolkhov semiconductor plant in Russia's Oryol Oblast on May 21st, according to Ukraine's general staff. The facility manufactures components used in Sukhoi aircraft and Iskander and Kinzhal missile systems. The strike followed Russia's claim that over 150 Ukrainian drones were intercepted overnight across many regions, including 53 in Oryol. The regional governor initially reported no damages or injuries, but later acknowledged that the plant had been hit. Footage of the burning facility was circulated by the Ukrainian Telegram channel Supernova Plus. The Ukrainian General Staff stated that 10 drones struck the site and caused a fire, and that damage assessments are ongoing. The U.S. has sanctioned the Bolkhov plant since last year for its role in supporting Russia's military-industrial sector. Ukraine's military noted the facility is a major producer of semiconductor components, such as diodes, microcircuits, and optoelectric switches, and supplies at least 19 Russian defense-related plants. Last year, Ukrainian forces initially adapted their Yak-52 training aircraft into low-cost drone interceptors by outfitting the back seat with a crew member armed with a shotgun. This straightforward improvised method proved effective, especially when considering the relatively slow flight speed and maneuverability of the Yak-52, which makes it well suited for engaging small unmanned aerial vehicles at low altitude. A year later, a Russian design bureau has taken this concept further with a modified version of the same aircraft. The new Yak-52B2 incorporates both the rear-mounted shotgun setup and a modern underwing sensor turret, enhancing its utility for air patrol and target acquisition. This upgraded version maintains the core strengths of the airframe, its ease of handling, affordability, and reliability, making it a practical tool for defending urban and industrial zones. The use of such converted light aircraft is driven by economic logic. Conventional air defense systems can cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars per missile. In contrast, deploying a light aircraft armed with basic weapons and sensors to intercept drones offers a low-cost alternative. Reports indicate that the Yak-52B2 can engage both fixed-wing drones like the AN-196 and unmanned variants of light aircraft such as the Aeroproject A-22. It remains uncertain whether the Yak-52B2 will see widespread adoption by Russian forces or how extensively it will be produced. Gee, if only someone had highlighted the recent developments in the Russian aviation industry in a video that was released on Tuesday. I mean, you could maybe go to Tochnyi and watch that video if you were interested in learning more. On May 22nd, Andrei Kondratyev, the director and chief designer of the Kurgan-Pribor defense plant in Russia's Kurgan region, was assaulted outside his home in what appears to have been a targeted incident. The attack occurred in the early evening as Kondratyev returned from work and was dropped off by a driver. Shortly after entering his building, he was struck multiple times in the head with a hammer. Emergency medical responders arrived quickly, and sources suggest their immediate intervention may have been critical to his survival. Kondratyev remains hospitalized with head injuries. Russian law enforcement has launched an extensive investigation, and a search for the attacker is underway. Officials from the Kurgan branch of the Interior Ministry have confirmed that Kondratyev was the victim of the violent act. Official reports so far from the Russians do not indicate any direct connection to Ukrainian special forces. I think car bombs are more their style, but anyway. The assault drew attention due to Kondratyev's critical role in Russia's defense manufacturing sector. As the head of Kurgan-Pribor, he oversees a company that plays a major part in producing components for Russian aerial and artillery munitions. This includes air-to-air missiles based on the R-73 platform, correction kits for aerial bombs, and fuses used across various forms of artillery. Kurgan-Pribor reportedly supplies more than half of the Russian military's domestic needs for these fuses, covering rockets, mortars, and artillery shells. Given the facility's strategic importance and Kondratyev's senior role, his position is seen as potentially connected to the motive behind the attack. For now, authorities are treating Kondratyev's case as a high-priority criminal investigation. My money's on disgruntled employee or former employee, but who knows. Ukraine's 425th Separate Assault Regiment, Skala, has introduced a new tactical innovation by deploying a motorcycle-based assault unit, which recently took part in offensive operations along the Kursk axis. This marks the first time such a mobility-focused assault method has been used by the Ukrainian armed forces. A video released by the regiment's press service documented the unit's operations and revealed key aspects of the strategy. Operating under the cover of night and equipped with night vision gear, the motorcycle teams launched a fast-paced assault, maneuvering through anti-vehicle defenses, commonly referred to as dragon's teeth, before crossing the border and engaging enemy positions. The speed and flexibility of the motorcycles allowed the assault team to bypass engineering obstacles, break into hostile territory, capture key positions, and rapidly retreat afterward. In addition to their direct attack role, the unit also conducted battlefield extractions. A damaged vehicle's crew was retrieved using a quad bike, and a wounded soldier was evacuated on a motorcycle. According to experts, the operation was carried out near the location of the now-ruined village of Novy Put, situated on the Ukraine-Russian border in the Kursk region. The motorcycle company, formally introduced on May 20th, has been documented using massed formations of two-person teams, a driver and a gunner, both carrying AK-74U rifles. This weapon choice is tailored for mobility, allowing soldiers to shoot more effectively while in motion and enabling easier weapon handling in tight or fast-moving engagements. Once on foot, the two-person crews operate as tactical pairs. Training for the unit reportedly involved unrestricted access to fuel and ammunition, enabling extensive practical exercises. Observers speculate that these motorcycles may eventually be assigned to specialized functions within the unit, such as providing electronic warfare support or transporting medical stretchers and ammunition. The overarching purpose of these units is to rapidly breach open terrain, seize forward positions, and retreat before the enemy can mount effective counteraction. The approach leverages speed and surprise to reduce exposure to return fire and electronic surveillance, making the motorcycle company a high-mobility, high-risk strike force. Russia is also using motorcycle tactics, although it sounds like they're using them a little bit differently based on this report, so maybe we can talk to some of the guys who are more knowledgeable on that topic. On Wednesday, 3 of Moscow's 4 main airports temporarily halted flight operations due to aerial threats near the capital. Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports paused all incoming and outgoing flights, while Sheremetyevo implemented a more limited response, allowing only selected departures while suspending arrivals. These actions were taken following reports that Ukrainian drones were approaching the city. According to the Moscow mayor, local air defense systems engaged and neutralized 3 aerial threats as they neared Moscow. He confirmed that emergency crews were dispatched to the impact locations, but did not provide specific details on where these incidents occurred. This particular disruption to air traffic was brief. Russia's Federal Aviation Authority, Rosaviatsia, reported that all restrictions were lifted within an hour of their imposition. A report released by the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, developed in coordination with intelligence agencies from the US and several European nations, outlined a coordinated cyber operation conducted by the Russian state-linked hacking group known as Fancy Bear. The campaign, which has been ongoing since 2022, has targeted both government and private organizations in NATO countries with the goal of monitoring and potentially disrupting logistical support to Ukraine. According to the advisory, Fancy Bear gained access to approximately 10,000 surveillance cameras, both public traffic systems and private security feeds. These devices were located near key infrastructure such as border checkpoints, rail hubs, and military facilities. A significant portion of the compromised systems, around 80%, were located inside Ukraine, with the remainder spread across Romania, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. The intent behind the operation appears to be the collection of visual intelligence to monitor and track aid shipments entering Ukraine. In addition to camera access, the group reportedly engaged in phishing campaigns that used explicit content and forged documents to bait recipients. These efforts were aimed at stealing credentials and breaching internal systems used for managing transportation and logistics, including sensitive data like rail timetables and cargo manifests. Authorities warned that the objective of these operations was not only to surveil aid movement, but also to lay the groundwork for interfering with supply chains. In response, the National Cybersecurity Center called on companies and organizations involved in the transfer of aid to Ukraine to take urgent protective measures to secure their systems and data. The Ukrainian defense technology company Skiftek, known for its laser-based tactical training systems, has introduced a new drone training simulator aimed at preparing military personnel for aerial ammunition deployment scenarios. The new system is built on the DJI Mavic platform and was showcased at the DAWDAYS conference, DOUDAYS, DAWDAYS I assume, and is intended to serve a dual training purpose, enhancing the skills of both drone operators and infantry forces defending against them. The simulator allows drone pilots to practice precision targeting using simulated ordnance equipped with laser emitters, while ground troops train in counter-drone tactics using small arms. The system includes realistic mechanics. When infantry successfully, quote, hits a drone, the pilot experiences a simulated loss of video feed and control over the payload drop, imitating the aircraft's neutralization. A key feature is the use of mock grenades that emit laser pulses to simulate the fragmentation pattern of a real detonation. This adds realism to the training by replicating the effects of drone-dropped explosives on foot soldiers. In addition to the technical training, the simulator serves a psychological purpose. It builds confidence among the ground troops by demonstrating that drones can be neutralized effectively with small arms fire. Skiftek has already secured preliminary orders and plans to begin mass production of the new system in the coming months. Future developments include simulators based on FPV drones and counter-drone technologies. The company has also developed a software to analyze soldier behavior during the exercises. The tool enables instructors to assess individual performance in detail, highlighting strengths and areas that need improving to refine training protocols. Skiftek is also notable for becoming the first Ukrainian defense technology company to secure a contract with the U.S. Army for deployment of laser training systems. Its products are currently in use by both the Ukrainian Armed Forces and the National Guard for ongoing military preparation. Up next, we have economy and aid. Finland has announced it will provide artillery ammunition to Ukraine using funds derived from frozen Russian assets as part of a broader European Union initiative. According to Finland's Ministry of Defense, the total value of the package is 90 million euros, and the procurement will be handled through domestic defense manufacturers. The Finnish defense minister confirmed that additional funding had been secured for Ukraine using frozen assets. He noted that the decision reflects a dual objective, aiding Ukraine's military capacity while generating economic activity within Finland. Ammunition supplied through this package will include 155mm artillery shells and is intended to meet both battlefield requirements and long-term interoperability goals. With this new contribution, Finland's overall military commitments to Ukraine have reached 660 million euros. However, specific details about delivery schedules, transportation methods, and the exact composition of the shipments remain undisclosed. Ukraine and the European Union are working towards reaching a stable agreement on trade conditions by the end of July 2025, despite the implementation of transitional measures set to begin on June 6th. The Ukrainian Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food discussed the issue during high-level meetings in Brussels, emphasizing that both sides are politically committed to finding a balanced outcome. The transitional measures, recently approved by the European Commission, are intended to prevent disruption in the short term and ensure Ukrainian agricultural exports continue reaching European markets. Although temporary, the measures provide a critical window for negotiations to avoid harsher restrictions and maintain trade continuity. Colby clarified that the decision by the European Commission is not final, but rather an interim solution designed to avert immediate negative consequences while creating space to revise the terms under the existing association agreement and the deep and comprehensive free trade area established in 2016. The minister stressed the importance of concluding a long-term arrangement that offers both predictability for Ukrainian producers and supports the country's economic stability during wartime. The Transitional Implementing Act was adopted on May 22nd by the European Commission and will remain in effect while revisions to the DCFTA are under negotiation. The European Parliament has approved new tariffs targeting Russian fertilizer imports, aiming to cut off a significant revenue stream used to fund Moscow's ongoing military activities in Ukraine. The measure passed with strong support, 411 votes in favor and 100 against, and will begin imposing duties in July and incrementally increase them until Russian fertilizer is effectively priced out of European markets by 2028. Russia currently supplies over a quarter of the EU's nitrogen-based fertilizers, with Belarus contributing an additional volume. European policymakers are seeking into this dependence, viewing it as incompatible with their broader geopolitical and security interests. According to the lawmaker behind the bill, the EU must no longer allow its agricultural supply chain to indirectly support Russia's war economy. While member states must still formally ratify the legislation, early indications suggest broad consensus among the governments. However, the move has triggered pushback from farming organizations concerned about rising input costs. A leading EU Farmers Association warned that removing access to affordable Russian fertilizers could significantly increase the cost of production for European farmers. The tariffs are also seen by Brussels as a tool to reduce indirect imports of Russian natural gas, since gas is a fundamental component in fertilizer manufacturing. By constraining fertilizer imports, the EU hopes to diminish the role of Russian gas in its agricultural sector. The policy is intended to stimulate domestic fertilizer production within the EU, a goal supported by European manufacturers. Tiffany Stefani of Yara, a major Norwegian fertilizer producer, welcomed the action but acknowledged that the farmers' economic concerns are well-founded. She noted that the industry had been urging EU action on the issue for over 3 years. The agricultural sector is already grappling with high production costs, squeezed profit margins, and increasing pressure from global competition. Many farmers see the new tariffs as another strain. To mitigate the impact, some EU officials have proposed lifting duties on imports from alternative suppliers in regions like North Africa, Central Asia, the US, Trinidad and Tobago, and Nigeria. Ukraine has introduced a new long-range multi-role strike drone known as the Batyar, developed by the domestic firm Deep Strike Tech. Originally conceived as a loitering munition for deep precision strikes, the drone's functionality has since been expanded to encompass multiple battlefield roles, depending on mission configuration. The Batyar weighs approximately 60 kilograms and is powered by a gasoline engine. In its extended range setup, it is capable of carrying a warhead weighing up to 18 kilograms and can reach targets over 800 kilometers away. Deep Strike Tech highlighted that one of the primary design goals was operational flexibility. The drone can be launched from a catapult or vehicle without the need for fixed infrastructure or custom deployment platforms. Its versatility allows it to operate as a one-way attack drone, a decoy for confusing enemy air defenses, or a low-cost bomber for frontline use. Engineers noted that the drone retains flight stability even when sustaining partial damage, particularly during its terminal approach to a target. Although the drone's shape visually resembles the Iranian-manufactured Shahed UAVs used by Russia, Deep Strike Tech clarified that the Batyar's aerodynamic design was independently developed using Western reference materials. The similarities are said to be functional rather than derivative, as the Batyar serves comparable tactical purposes. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has officially authorized the deployment of the Krampus mobile robotic flamethrower platform for use by its military forces. What a sentence to say. Developed domestically, Krampus is engineered for versatile battlefield roles in both assault and defense operations. Compact and transportable, the system can be easily carried on the back of a pickup truck, van, or trailer. It's built on a track chassis and powered by 2 silent electric motors, allowing it to traverse difficult terrain, including sand, forests, mud, snow, and steep slopes, while minimizing its acoustic signature. Krampus is operated remotely through communications channels designed to resist electronic warfare interference, ensuring reliable control in contested environments. The platform is designed for use in all weather conditions and can remain operational for extended periods due to its long-life battery, even while idle in standby mode. Equipped with an onboard surveillance camera and a weapons module, Krampus is armed with Ukrainian-made RPG-16 infantry flamethrowers. These launchers are designed to target enemy personnel, fortifications, and lightly armored vehicles. The RPG-16 disperses a highly flammable aerosol cloud with a 7 to 8 meter diameter, which ignites moments after deployment to produce an intense fireball. The blast reaches temperatures of up to 2,500 degrees Celsius and generates overpressure capable of incapacitating targets within its vicinity. In terms of firepower, a single RVP-6 round delivers destructive capability roughly equivalent to that of a 122mm artillery shell. The ammunition also includes fragmentation effects, which further enhance its impact against soft targets. The flamethrower system boasts a 600-meter effective range with a standard sight and can reach up to 1 kilometer at maximum range. Each munition weighs 11 kilograms, including the warhead, and is launched from a tube measuring 900 millimeters in length with a 93mm caliber. Facing a sharp drop in oil and gas revenues, the Russian government has begun slashing funding across several key industrial programs, according to a May 22nd report by the pro-government outlet Kommersant. The cuts come as Russia's energy-dependent economy contends with global price declines, growing international sanctions, and rising wartime spending. Earlier this month, Russian oil prices fell to under $50 a barrel, nearly 40% below the assumptions built into the federal budget. The downturn, as reported by Reuters, represents a 2-year low and has severely undermined the Kremlin's fiscal projections. In response, Moscow is implementing widespread reductions in state investment across aviation, automotive, high-tech, maritime, and robotics sectors. One of the largest cuts affects Russia's civil aviation program, intended to replace Western-built planes with domestic alternatives, which will see its funding reduced by over 20% from 101 billion rubles to 78 billion. Go watch that Tochnyi video Stanimir made on Tuesday, please. Other targeted programs include a civilian goods production initiative, which was meant to increase domestic output by 40% by 2030, but is now slated to lose 66.9 billion rubles in 2025. Funding for high-tech industries will be reduced by 46 billion rubles, while the automotive sector will lose 35 billion. Support for innovative transport production is being trimmed by 25 billion, and the shipbuilding sector will be cut by 12.6 billion. Even smaller but strategically significant programs are being hit. A robotics development initiative aimed at advancing industrial automation will lose nearly a third of its budget, with cuts totaling 1.7 billion rubles from an original 5.6 billion. These reductions come amid broader signs of economic stress. Russia's national statistics agency, Rosstat, confirmed a marked slowdown in economic growth, citing the combined pressures of falling energy revenues, international sanctions, and persistent inflation. In the first quarter of 2025, the Central Bank of Russia reported a substantial spike in unaccounted financial outflows, recording $14.7 billion under the net errors and omissions category in the balance of payments. This is the highest level in nearly 2 decades, surpassing the previous record of $11.2 billion set in 2006, according to the Moscow Times. The statistical category typically captures unexplained currency movements and financial transactions that are not formally registered in the official balance sheets, often indicating concealed or informal capital flight. Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, this figure has consistently risen, $6.1 billion in 2022, $9 billion in 2023 and 2024, and now a sharp escalation in early 2025. Analysts suggest that much of the outflow is linked to export revenues being retained abroad. This could be due to logistical difficulties in repatriating funds under current sanctions or a deliberate move by exporters to leave money offshore to manage foreign obligations or shield assets. In 2024 alone, Russian residents increased their foreign holdings by $66.8 billion, with $46 billion classified as other investments, a term that typically includes loans, deposits, and trade credits, often structured to avoid scrutiny. Meanwhile, foreign direct investment in Russia has collapsed, falling by $281 billion over the past 3 years amid international sanctions and the exodus of Western firms. The total financial account balance since the beginning of 2022 now stands at negative $333 billion, indicating a net capital drain from the country. These trends reflect a deeper erosion of trust in the domestic economic climate. When capital flows out via opaque channels at this scale, it signals that businesses and individuals are increasingly wary of the local economic environment. Concerns include sanctions exposure, political and legal unpredictability, and fears of future asset restrictions. As a result, more economic actors are choosing to park capital abroad, legally or otherwise, rather than risk keeping it within Russia's tightening financial system. And finally, this week we have international relations. A lot of stuff. Ukraine and the Czech Republic have formalized a new partnership in the agricultural sector through a memorandum of understanding signed by the Ukrainian Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food and the Czech Agricultural Minister. The agreement outlines a comprehensive framework for cooperation aimed at advancing Ukraine's alignment with European Union standards and strengthening bilateral agricultural ties. Key components of the agreement include support for Ukraine's EU integration process in agriculture, legal harmonization with EU agricultural regulations, and joint efforts to develop livestock farming, crop cultivation, and aquaculture. The memorandum also prioritizes improvements in veterinary and phytosanitary controls, food safety systems, and scientific collaboration. The two ministries plan to facilitate exchanges in research, education, and innovation. Additional commitments include organizing joint participation in agricultural exhibitions and trade fairs, promoting mutual trade in agricultural goods, and establishing a dedicated working group to oversee the implementation of the agreement. On May 23rd, Ukraine and the United States officially launched the Joint Reconstruction Investment Fund, a key element of their broader minerals agreement. The announcement came from the Ukrainian economy minister, who confirmed the receipt of the final diplomatic communication from the U.S., delivered by the Charge d'Affaires, Julie S. Davis, signaling the fund's activation. The fund is the centerpiece of the U.S.-Ukraine Minerals Framework signed on April 30th, granting the United States priority access to Ukrainian reserves of strategic resources such as lithium, titanium, and other critical minerals. These materials are essential to global supply chains, particularly in the defense, aerospace, and renewable energy sectors. Joint management of the fund will be handled by Ukraine's Public-Private Partnerships Agency and the U.S.'s International Development Finance Corporation. While specific operational and financial details remain undisclosed, both governments describe the fund as a long-term tool for driving Ukraine's post-war economic recovery and facilitating foreign investment in its resource sector. The Ukrainian Prime Minister suggested in April that future American military aid could potentially be integrated into the fund structure. According to Axios, during a recent call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and several European leaders, former U.S. President Donald Trump stated that he had asked Russian President Vladimir Putin to offer a proposal that Ukraine and its European allies would not immediately reject. Trump said Putin agreed to begin direct negotiations on a ceasefire, prompting a moment of silence from the other leaders on the call, who were reportedly caught off guard by the claim. Zelensky responded by reminding the group that Russia had already agreed to talks and that the first round of ceasefire discussions had occurred on May 16th in Istanbul. Trump did not directly engage on that point. Participants in the conversation told Axios that Trump had encouraged the idea of initiating peace talks with a temporary 30-day ceasefire. However, a White House official later clarified, not sure I'd use that word in this case, that Trump never explicitly stated a ceasefire should be a prerequisite for negotiations or that Zelensky would be free to define the terms of those talks. Trump reportedly told the leaders that Putin was now prepared to submit a formal peace proposal outlining the terms for a ceasefire and broader resolution to the war. He emphasized that he had asked Putin for a proposal that could be seriously considered, not one that would be dismissed outright. Despite this, Zelensky and the Europeans on the call pushed back, highlighting that the past rounds of talks with Moscow, including the most recent one, had produced no progress. Zelensky warned that without outside pressure, Putin would not alter his stance. Participants noted that Trump appeared more optimistic about Putin's statements than the other leaders, describing them as if they represented a shift, when, according to the participants, Putin's position remained unchanged. A White House official argued that Putin's willingness to present a written proposal was itself noteworthy, pointing out that Russia had previously refused to formalize its vision for ending the war. Nevertheless, the overall tone of the call reflected skepticism from European leaders in Ukraine, who saw little substance in what Trump framed as a diplomatic breakthrough. In a rare moment of bipartisan alignment, a group of U.S. senators has introduced a resolution demanding the return of Ukrainian children taken by Russia during its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. The resolution emphasizes that no peace deal should be concluded until all abducted minors are safely brought back to their home country. The resolution denounces what it describes as Russia's deliberate and systematic transfer of Ukrainian children, accusing Moscow of using these acts to erase Ukrainian national identity through forced assimilation programs. It links the deportations to violations of international law, including provisions of the Geneva Convention and the Genocide Convention, which prohibit the forcible transfer of children between national or ethnic groups. The initiative is spearheaded by senators from both parties, Republicans Charles Grassley, Roger Wicker, Joni Ernst, and Rick Scott, along with Democrats Amy Klobuchar, Dick Durbin, and John Fetterman. The resolution highlights the increased dangers faced by children since the Russian invasion, including trafficking, forced labor, abuse, and other threats. The U.S. State Department's Trafficking in Persons report also documented the use of children in military roles and broader human trafficking abuses within the Russian-controlled areas. As of mid-April 2025, Ukrainian authorities had documented over 19,500 cases of children unlawfully taken to Russia, Belarus, or occupied Ukrainian territories, with only 1,274 returned so far. The resolution has been backed by several Ukrainian NGOs such as Razom for Ukraine and Save Ukraine, which are actively working on the ground to recover and reunite affected children with their families. Tensions in the Baltic Sea escalated significantly as NATO forces attempted to enforce new European Union sanctions targeting Russia's shadow oil fleet. The confrontation began when Estonian naval forces moved to intercept and inspect a ship known as the Jaguar, a Gabon-flagged oil tanker recently added to the EU's sanctions blacklist for circumventing the Russian oil price cap. The vessel, which had been tracked departing a Russian port, refused to identify itself or comply with orders to halt. The action followed the rollout of the EU's 17th sanctions package, which blacklisted 149 vessels, part of an expanding crackdown on over 350 ships linked to illegal Russian oil exports. These tankers, often uninsured and in poor condition, have raised environmental and security concerns in the region. Their presence has been linked to a series of underwater cable disruptions and oil spill risks, particularly hazardous in the shallow, enclosed Baltic Sea. As Estonian patrol ships and aircraft moved to board the Jaguar, the Russian military intervened. An Su-35 fighter jet was deployed to the area, circling the tanker in what defense officials described as an unmistakable threat. In response, NATO commanders aborted the planned boarding, calculating that preceding risk triggering a direct military confrontation. Estonia's foreign minister later confirmed that the Russian jet briefly entered NATO airspace during the incident. Finnish and Lithuanian officials condemned the maneuver, with Lithuania's prime minister warning that Russia is prepared to escalate to protect its illicit oil transport routes, even at the risk of starting a conflict. The EU sanctions not only bar listed tankers from European ports, but also restrict access to insurance, maintenance, and refueling services. Further measures include planned visa bans and asset freezes targeting the captains of sanctioned vessels. Alexander Bastrykin, the head of Russia's investigative committee, revealed that 20,000 individuals who recently received Russian citizenship have been deployed to the front lines in Ukraine. Speaking at the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum, Bastrykin stated that military investigators had identified a total of 80,000 naturalized citizens attempting to evade enlistment duties, many of whom had not reported to draft offices at all. According to him, these individuals were registered for military service upon gaining citizenship, yet showed a resistance to fulfilling the obligations that come with it. He specifically referenced migrants from Central Asian countries, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, who had acquired Russian citizenship but later sought to avoid military service. Russian authorities have been conducting targeted raids on migrant communities, with law enforcement reportedly issuing draft notices on the spot or escorting individuals directly to enlistment centers. There have also been cases where new citizens were pressured into signing military contracts under the threat of having their citizenship revoked and facing deportation. This follows Bastrykin's earlier remarks in June of 2024 when he reported that over 30,000 newly naturalized foreign nationals had been identified for avoiding military registration. At that time, around 10,000 of them were reportedly assigned to rear area duties such as trench construction and fortification building rather than frontline combat roles. These updated figures highlight a growing reliance by Russian authorities on migrant populations to meet their military manpower needs, often through coercive or legally ambiguous methods that blend immigration enforcement with conscription. And last item this week, Russia and Ukraine have initiated the first phase of a large multi-day prisoner exchange, marking a significant development following the rare direct negotiations between the two sides last week in Istanbul. This is the most substantial swap agreement since early in the war. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, Ukraine has returned 270 Russian military personnel and 120 civilians. The released individuals have been transported to Belarus, where they are reportedly undergoing medical evacuations and receiving care. The Ukrainian hotline I Want to Live, which facilitates the surrender of Russian soldiers, confirmed to the independent broadcaster TV Rain that the exchange process is expected to continue over several days. The agreement was reached during last week's Istanbul talks, the first direct dialogue between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators since 2022. However, specific details about the timing and location of the exchange were never made public prior to Friday's announcement. And that wraps it up for the main headlines this week. We will now
So I think this week, Mr. Germanade, you have no report. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to say.
Okay. So we'll now move to my little segment I call Stuff I Wanted to Talk About. So I've got a few things this week that I just wanted to discuss with the panel. The first is just the general scale of Russian and drone attacks over the last week. It seems like they've really increased a lot. We've had pretty regular attacks that involve over 100 drones. I would say that used to be like the exception rather than the rule. Like 100 drones was kind of a big deal. Now I would say that's basically a regular occurrence. It's not considered a big deal anymore. And now this level of strike we're looking at is for Russia. They're claiming that, or I shouldn't say, Ukraine says that Russia launched 298 drones and 69 missiles against Ukraine the other night. And Russia claims that Ukraine, around the same time, launched 800 drones into Russia. So, you know, again, the Russian figures are always a little bit sketchy because they're kind of weirdos about that stuff. But it's enough to say, I think that they're at least sending, you know, hundreds of drones, I think is an accurate number. So the scale of this seems to be increasing a lot. It seems to me like I don't know, just this is becoming a more important part of the war. Like as the war continues on, this seems to be, the strategic strikes from both sides seem to be increasing. Obviously, the tactics are a little different on either side. Like Russia regularly is hitting civilian areas, and there are lots of casualties. Ukraine appears to be more targeted in what they hit. They're hitting like very specific industries that represent like bottlenecks in the Russian supply chain, like electronics components and fuses and little bits like that. But yeah, I don't know. It seems to me like this seems to be pretty much in line with what you guys have been saying about the drones, which is that the production will just keep increasing until they reach a certain limitation. But I don't think we're quite there on the strategic drones yet, but it seems to me like we're nearly approaching that level of scale. And I don't know, it's pretty horrific. Like it's one of the more disturbing developments of the war over the last couple months, I would say. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say about that.
Well, I just wanted to add that both sides are turning more and more towards new or unconventional methods of interception. So not with missile defense systems, rather with manned gun systems and also drone interceptions. So I'm not sure what the status on the Russian side of intercepting long-range strike drones with drones, if they've entered that sphere, but Ukraine certainly has, and I think that's going to scale pretty drastically over the summer. Yeah, and I think that's a sign that, you know, both sides are unfortunately for Ukraine running out of interceptors as well, or at least the scale of the drone attacks are so large that there's basically no way anyways that they would be able to intercept everything with conventional air defense systems.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else? It seems to me like, I don't know if Russia's choosing good targets, but in terms of like the raw abilities that they have a slight advantage in this area because they're able to use the drones as like more or less decoys or whatever you want to call it for their missiles, and their missile strikes, you know, have been pretty devastating. But it is pretty impressive to me. It's a lot like the Ukrainian Air Force, right? Like, it's crazy that they are even in the fight. Like, if you would have asked a lot of experts before this all started what was going to happen in the air picture, they would have told you, like, it's going to be over for Ukraine, like, pretty quick. But they've got planes in the air, almost 4 years later, right? So that seems to be the situation here, where Ukraine didn't have any missiles that could hit Moscow, but they've managed to, during wartime, develop a drone program that is strong enough to now keep Moscow airports closed 3 out of 7 days of the week, right? And to hit key facilities a lot. They obviously have to be very targeted in what they hit. It's not easy to hit a factory. Like, factories are big facilities made out of cement, right? It's not easy to hurt them with little drones, but it does seem like Ukraine has managed to target certain things. Like, this week, right? They hit a giant vat of acid and they hit a bunch of fertilizer, right? Because they know that stuff will blow up. It's hard to clean up, like stuff like that. They're very smart about what they hit, and I don't know. They seem to be doing a pretty good job, but I don't know. Overall, it seems like this is an increasingly important component in the war. Obviously, it's always been important, but the scale of this is getting crazy. And I think both societies and economies are really stretched thin, as it were. And this is like not helping. Basically, it's this might be a really key factor, I think, in the ability of either side to continue. Yeah, Erlend, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to add that the Ukrainians also hit a pretty important facility in Russia, Energia plant. It's producing specific batteries or electricity components for the Russian missile industry. So that's pretty significant. And the factory got pretty heavily hit. So it's good. I also see that there is a question that I want to ask to Colby. So Joe is asking, what about the modification of the Iskander? Is the Iskander M interceptable by Ukraine?
Yeah, so I saw there was some comment from a Ukrainian official about some supposed modifications that the Russians were making to Iskander. I don't know exactly what those modifications are. Haven't looked into that in any sort of detail, so I don't have any specific comments to offer about whether the Russians actually have made any tangible changes that are going to make the missile significantly more difficult to intercept. But Iskander is nothing particularly sophisticated. It is capable, but Ukraine definitely is still capable of intercepting it. PAC-3 MSC and other systems can intercept Iskander. So the challenge really has always just been for Ukraine. It's about scale. It's about the availability of interceptors and the size of Russia's complex raid. So there isn't a whole lot that Russia has that Ukraine has no means of dealing with. It's just a question of, do they have enough? So if Ukraine runs out of Patriot interceptors, then that would be a serious problem. But as long as Ukraine does have interceptors available, at least in theory, they can pretty much intercept everything that Russia has been throwing at them. Erezhnik would be the only exception to that, and that was like pretty much a one-off. So that's not really a concern in my view. So the important thing is that Ukraine is just continues to be supplied with a healthy amount of Patriot interceptors and interceptors for its other air defense systems.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move now to the next topic, which is motorcycles. So I think last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago, we saw like a meat wave motorcycle assault by the Russians, and I don't know, we were pretty taken aback. It looked relatively unsuccessful. I think everyone at the time kind of wrote it off as like, I don't know about this idea that the Russians came up with. But then this week we saw the Ukrainians have like activated and deployed. I think probably the OSINT guys knew about this way before, but there's a unit of Ukrainian brigade or National Guard unit, I forget which has basically like set up like a motorcycle unit, and they're doing these like assaults, and it sounds like they're using them a little differently than Russia. It sounded to me like this plan was to have them attack and then wait for, or I shouldn't say wait, have them attack to provoke a counterattack and then get out of there and then beat down the counterattack, right? That's something we've seen the Ukrainians doing before, where they'll sort of bait a counterattack and then attrit them. That sounds like what they're trying to do here with the bikes. But I don't know. It seems like tactically they're doing them a little bit differently than the way Russia's doing them. But it seems like maybe motorcycles are I shouldn't say we, but like it seems like maybe someone could underestimate how important these motorcycles potentially could be in terms of the current environment, right? Because we have a situation where it's being seen is the most dangerous thing at this point, right? And being seen is so easy these days that maybe speed is and mobility is really what you need in this scenario. I don't know. So maybe Erlend, like, what do you think about the way that the two sides are using motorcycles? Are they fundamentally using them differently? And then, like, what do you think about just motorcycles on a battlefield in 2025?
Well, first, I just want to say that motorcycles in modern warfare is not at all something new. It's been here since, before the 1940s, and especially during the Second World War, it was heavily used. And since then, it's been a part of certain elements of land warfare. And it definitely is effective when it's used for its intended role and and not used as a replacement for armored assaults, which is by and large what we've been seeing from Russia. They've basically substituted their assault vehicles, which used to be BMPs, tanks, and MTLBs, with light vehicles, being that Chinese buggies or golf cars, buhankas, or what do we call loaves, and other civilian vehicles, and a lot of motorcycles. And I would say that the motorcycles are probably not the least effective of those because of the speed, agility, etc. But when you're assaulting over a field, it's not as useful. If you want to use motorcycles for patrol and recon, that is completely within what I would say Western doctrine. I'm not sure, though, how that can be translated into the battlefield in Ukraine, where drones are so dominant. I can't really speak to that, but I could at least see that it is somewhat effective in use as probing attacks. And if that is what Ukraine is trying to use them for, well, then I don't want to speak too badly about it, but at the same time, I am skeptical about assaulting in open terrain in general. And if that's what they're doing with the motorcycles, then they will probably get casualties. But in the end, that you have casualties everywhere in this war, and maybe they found out that this is a way to have less casualties. I don't know. So it's a little bit hard to judge.
It seems sort of like they're treating them a little bit like dragoons, right? In the sense that, like, you see some of the footage where their job is to like go find a bush, like ride there real quick in their motorcycles, and then jump out like this, exactly what's on screen right now, and behave as regular infantry. It's just that they use the horse, or the motorcycle to get to the place, right? That's like a very, I don't know, maybe I'm off on my military terminology, but that's like what the dragoons used to do, right?
Yeah, it's a form of cavalry, and that is not new. I just want to emphasize that has been a part of several Western armies for a long time. But the question is, what is the support element behind this? Will they get immediate reinforcement by infantry fighting vehicles, tanks, artillery, etc.? Because if they don't, then they are very, very soft targets in a saturated combat area, and that's, it's going to be very difficult. So it all depends how they use it. I hope they're not going to copy paste what the Russians do. Although I want to say that when the Russians started using motorcycles heavily, there were a lot of Ukrainian units who were completely unprepared for that. So, as many things in this war, it may have limited effect for limited time. As the enemy adapts to your tactics, you're going to have less efficiency with the new tactics.
Yeah, we see a lot of that where like one tactic becomes very dominant for a while, and then it's not that it goes away, but it doesn't have the same impact that it used to. Cool. Does anyone else have any thoughts on motorcycles before we move on?
No.
All right. Next topic is Baltic shenanigans. So I covered the Shadow Tanker incident or Shadow Fleet incident that already happened this week. That was kind of a big deal, but there's been several other issues going on. So I just thought this article does a good job summarizing them real quick. So first, there was that incident I already mentioned with like all this stuff going on where tanker was trying to, go sell some oil illicitly. They're not allowed in international waters without a flag. So it was like Estonia's international waters or whatever. They came out to like intercept it. They sent like a ship and a helicopter. Russia sent a plane and violated Lithuanian airspace to like respond to that and basically threaten them. As far as I understand, they backed down from like the seizure or the inspection or whatever they were doing. I don't know if that means the ship was allowed to go on its way or not. That was one part I wasn't clear on. But the point is, Russia, this was a very clear signal from Russia. Number one, that they are like, up until now, they've sort of been denying the Shadow Fleet's existence and its connections to the Russian state, right? They've been like, oh, ships with no flags, mysteriously departing from Russian ports. How strange, right? But this is like very direct, like, hey, we're going to protect our oil exports type deal, right? So that's number one. And then number two is, of course, it's a sign that they're very concerned about this oil export issue, the Shadow Fleet issue, that they're willing to risk an actual like shooting conflict with Western countries just to get this stupid boat, to its destination. So I think part of it is like desperation on Russia's part, but it's also pretty ominous that Russia appears to now be regularly violating airspace in the Baltic and what that means for security going forward. So on the same day that happened, the Polish defense minister stated that Polish fighter jets intercepted a Russian tactical bomber performing dangerous maneuvers in international airspace over the Baltic Sea. Then earlier on Wednesday, the Polish prime minister said Poland launched a military intervention after another ship from the sanctioned Shadow Fleet was making suspicious maneuvers near an undersea cable. And last week, of course, there was another jet that entered. Oh, no, that was, I think, the one I mentioned. But yeah, so I don't know. There's just been a lot of incidents. It seems like things are kind of heating up in the Baltic. The Russians are very clearly, I shouldn't say very clearly, but it seems to me like they're trying to send some kind of signal that they're like, they're rattling their saber in the Baltic, for lack of a better term. But so this is a pretty dangerous development for those countries in the region. They probably need to take their airspace. They probably need to start preparing for Russia to be regularly violating their airspace, and like, what are they going to do about it? Something like that. So I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
The answer is, in my opinion, escalate to de-escalate. They need to not, they cannot consider these bullying behavior from the Russians as something that, if they just keep their head low, it's going to disappear. They have to do the opposite, and that's going to be difficult because it's there are a lot of countries in the West that are very nervous about cutting off Russian Air Force, and yeah, it's what we have to do. We have to send up more fighter airplanes than they have when they are doing it, and just say, if you don't leave, we're going to shoot you down.
Yeah, I basically agree. I think there is some compromise in terms of, like, I do understand the perspective of, like, do we really want to start a war over this, right? Like letting Russia have some stupid ship. Might it be smarter to not? I understand that reasoning, but I do agree with you. There needs to be some kind of consequence. Maybe doesn't have to be like a shooting, kind of a kinetic response, right? But you need to do something. You can't just back down and let Russia like win in that way. You have to make them pay somehow. And there's lots of ways the EU could do that. There are certain liberties that Russia still has in the international system that Europe could start systematically taking away. Things like that. But I broadly agree with you that there needs to be some level of response. Otherwise, this will do nothing but embolden Russia.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right, next one is Romanian elections. So yeah, pretty straightforward. There was an election in Romania. There were two candidates, a relatively well-adjusted, professional, and a fairly demagogic politician. That person, it was very clear there was a very strong Russian influence campaign to promote him. And I'm definitely not an expert on the Romanian like political situation, but there was like a court situation last like a month ago, right? Erlend, do you remember this? Where they had to like
a couple of months ago.
Yeah, they had to like ban parties from the elections or something because of Russian interference. Is that what happened?
No, so they basically canceled the election or postponed it.
Okay.
They had a first round where a completely unknown candidate got the majority or the highest percentage during their first round. So they had a preliminary presidential election round, and then the second round where there are two candidates that face off. And after that first round, the Constitutional Court, I believe, basically nulled that first round of elections because the intelligence agency gave proof that there was massive Russian influence or foreign influence. That candidate also got arrested by and also some of his deputies were caught with a bunch of money that seemed to be deriving from some illicit activity, and I think it's still an ongoing investigation. But he was banned from the elections. So then this next guy came up, but he is, as far as I understand, a more notable politician with a lot more experience. He's been in the game for at least 10 years, and he used to be some sort of like protest leader in the past.
Gotcha. Yeah. So he ran against a relatively establishment candidate who had a pretty reasonable pedigree. And the election was basically a blowout for the establishment guy, the sort of pro-Russian or anti-Ukraine, I don't know what you want to call it, but he said specifically that he wanted, I think it might be a little cliche to say it, but he seems kind of like a Trump-like figure. He was saying things like, we need to make Ukraine pay for the military aid we've already given them, right? So yeah, I think it's fair to say he was a fairly anti-Ukraine candidate. I'm not super familiar with his position on the matter, but terms like that make me assume. And anyway, he lost in a pretty significant by a pretty significant margin. And of course, now he's doing the whole like, oh, the fake election, blah blah blah. But yeah, and then there was a little bit of a spat between the founder of Telegram. Mentioned to he was like saying publicly that the French interfered in the Romanian election, and there was like a whole argument between the government of France and the founder of Telegram about election interference and all that. So I don't know. It was just a big mess. I think Russia's fingerprints are all over this thing. It's pretty evident. I would say moving forward, it's probably a blueprint of how Russia will attempt to influence politics in European countries moving forward. And it's probably, we could probably learn a lot from the Romanian court's response to their view of the situation. And like, I don't know, it seems like Romania managed to like navigate through the Russian interference and elect a not crazy candidate that will like go against their interests as a country. So good on them.
I just want to mention that Simeon had not just a little bit anti-Ukrainian sentiments. He had been stating fairly harsh sentiment against Ukraine and aid to Ukraine. He wanted to stop all aid to Ukraine, one, and two, he wanted to stop all transfer of military equipment through Romania into Ukraine. So that would have been that last point would have been absolutely devastating for Ukraine, because almost half of all military aid goes through Romania into Ukraine. He also wanted to deny the use of Romanian ports for Ukrainian export, and there is still quite a bit of export going through Romanian ports, especially grain. So that would have been very bad for Ukraine. So very good that the bright side of things won. I guess I just also want to mention that the Nikos Urdan, as far as I understood, wasn't really a part of the main establishment. He's been the mayor of Bucharest, but that's it basically. He's not a part of any of the traditional parties that has been in power in Romania.
Okay, yeah, I know he was like an academic figure, right?
Yeah, and people look at him as more of a technocrat guy compared to the other politicians, not so ideological driven.
Well, it seems like they were lucky that they got someone who wasn't just like a straight establishment candidate then, because yeah, he won pretty handily. It's a little bit disturbing that 5 million people voted for this other guy, but it is what it is. Elections are always crazy, and yeah, good on Romania. Does anyone else want to say anything about the Romanian elections? Okay, Mr. Germinaid, I can't let you off the hook this week. We've got one thing you got to talk about. So there was a German company, a German firm that manufactures telecommunications equipment, fairly advanced stuff. And in a recent round of sanctions, I think in 2023, the EU sanctioned Russia from receiving this technology. And this company, I'm trying to find the name of the company. Do you remember the name?
Yeah, it's in the first sentence of the article. Calls for tightening of bloc sanctions regime after Contron was able to export millions in sensitive telecommunication.
Contron.
Yeah, Contron.
Okay.
Never heard of it, by the way.
Yeah, so I guess like I don't know, let's assume a medium-sized telecommunications company in Germany. They had a weird defense, though. They basically said that Russia had I'm trying to find the actual wording of the article to make sure I don't like paraphrase like my own mistake into it.
Yeah, take your time.
So the company said the shipments, which include high-tech and dual-use goods that were banned under the EU following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, were existing orders permitted because of export licenses granted to it by the Slovenian government. It said that it had stopped all fresh shipments following June 2023's new wave of sanctions. So that's their defense, that basically the Russians had already ordered this and they had already been given like some kind of special permission to export it by the Slovenian government directly, and therefore the sanctions don't count. Okay, Jay's saying that Contron is an Austrian company, so that's interesting. But yeah, so like there was a weird situation where the Russians ordered some stuff before the sanctions went into effect. The sanctions went into effect, and even though they were already in effect, the parent company said, oh, well, let's give the subsidiary company the equipment, and then the subsidiary company said, oh, well, let's export it because they ordered it. And yeah, I don't know. To me, that just seems like a very strange defense. Like the sanctions don't count because Russia ordered it before. I've never heard of that like being a viable excuse for a government policy or a change in a law or a tariff or whatever. Like when two countries are making trade policy, it's pretty unusual to say, oh, well, that doesn't count because we already ordered it, right? So I don't know. Yeah.
This is not a novel excuse. After the 2014 invasion of Crimea and eastern Ukraine, the sanctions regime that was put into place then infamously included all of these loopholes deliberately that allowed existing contracts to continue to be fulfilled. And even since 2022, there are many of such loopholes that were put into the sanctions regime to allow existing contracts to be fulfilled. And if you read the article, even says that there were exceptions for certain categories. So I don't know about this specific case, whether there is an actual violation or not. You would have to go read, like, get really into the weeds of the specific sanctions regulations and what they say. But this is not a new problem. This has been a problem for over 10 years now, that the sanctions regime, particularly in Europe, against Russia, has allowed all sorts of existing contracts to be honored, and only new contracts were prohibited from being signed. So this is just a pervasive issue that exists because European governments in many cases are not willing to go for the nuclear option and cause too much pain to their own companies who have significant business interests in Russia.
Yeah, it's a good point. It definitely happens a lot. There's lots of little loopholes, and of course the Russians are doing everything they can to find those little loopholes, paying lots of experts to go looking through the fine print and all that, and using all kinds of subsidiary companies and shell companies and blah blah blah. Yeah, so I don't know. Just I think as Colby makes a case here that the Europeans need to be a little bit more serious about these loopholes. Otherwise, the sanctions won't bite very effectively.
And moreover, when there are obvious sanction violations, it needs to have consequences for not just the companies, but yes, as well, the companies financially should be fined extensively, but the people that are actually signing off on those deals are personally responsible for not doing those deals in the first place, and they should be punished. Unfortunately, in many of the big European industrial countries like Germany and Italy, there are very, very few cases of people that have committed obvious sanction violations and then ended up in prison. In certain countries, that is being taken more seriously, and the people get consequences for violating the sanctions. But Italy, Germany, unfortunately, we don't see that happening. And when that happens, obviously, people will stop doing business with Russia. If there are no consequences, real consequences, then we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same case in the U.S. where I remember a while ago, sort of a similar situation. It was like a medium-sized like semiconductor company in the U.S. They just sort of accidentally exported a bunch of stuff to Russia and went oopsie doopsie, and they got given a pretty soft punishment for what they did. It seems like there's a pretty lax attitude. And based on my reading of this article, it seems like there was a sort of, it looks like the company understands that it might be a public relations issue to have something like this happen, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be any direct legal consequences. Of course, there may be, maybe in the future, but until now, it looks like there's pretty minimal consequences for these companies. It doesn't sound like they intend to continue doing it. Like that's, it didn't sound like the U.S. company or this German company will probably do it again. But it seems like they saw an opportunity to make some money, and they took it, and now they know they can't do it again. But they got away with it. So we need to stop that, because there's lots of little companies doing that. If every little company thinks that way, then we're gonna have problems. Cool. So that was the German company sanctions issue, and we have the final item this week of stuff I wanted to talk about, Erlend. There was some Norway matters. My matter was the prince visited Norway, it seemed like he took some cool pictures, and I don't know what, he was there on an official state visit. Could you talk about that?
Well, when the crown prince is acting regent and he visits a country, then it's a state visit. So he visited, of course, Zelensky, and he went around visiting troops, and I think he went to Bucha. He went to a hospital. Pretty significant, because I don't think there's been any other royal visiting Ukraine during the war. So I think that's at least a show from like the Norway is showing the importance of supporting Ukraine, and also bilateral relations by sending a crown prince.
Nice. Yeah, I read very briefly in the article, they said there hadn't been a visit from a Norwegian member of the royal family to Ukraine in over 20 years. So definitely before the war, even longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good news. Good.
Yeah, it's just happy news. But I would say there are some more important things that happened Ukraine related in Norway the last couple of weeks. So can we move to that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I tried to upload these pictures, and I don't know why it's showing like this, but anyways. So some of you may know, it's been written about around in social media I've seen, but a very small, insignificant Norwegian political party on, I would say, the extreme left, transitioning towards fascist sentiment, which is a obvious pro-Russian party. They're called FOR, the Party for Peace and Justice. One of the more notable candidates for this party is called Glenn Diesen. He is a fully blown Russian propagandist who's been on RT hundreds of times. He is going to Valdai, visiting various Russian talk shows, and also conferences. He's some sort of professor, not certain about the seriousness of his academic work, but he managed at least to get a professor title at a very small Norwegian university. And this guy is constantly spewing out Russian propaganda. In Norway, he is more or less a nobody, very marginalized, because he is spewing out obvious lies and people see it. But this party, which had around $5,000 in its registered funds, because every party in Norway needs to register how much funds they receive from donations, etc., to that they will use in political campaigns. They managed to plaster all of the Oslo metro with this ridiculous campaign, which says, use our money on welfare, not war. No to 85 billions to war in Ukraine. That was basically the mantra of this thing. A big scandal in Norway, got a lot of reactions. People had a pretty nice reaction to it. Just tear them down and throw them in the trash. And most of those posters were gone pretty quick, and the subway trains looked like this. You can see the empty advertisement spots. So it didn't really have the, I think that they obtained what they wanted. Unfortunately, they wanted to get fuss and discussion about this thing, and eventually they managed to get themselves a spot in the biggest political debate program on Norwegian television, where they also revealed who gave the money for this campaign, because it cost more than 1 million kroners. And the guy who funded the campaign is a Norwegian who lives in Murmansk, and he is the founder and an owner of a cement company. So it's called Erlend Betong, and he's a billionaire. He's made a lot of money in Russia, and one of the few. I think he's the only billionaire that's would support Russia from Norway, and it's really infuriating. This guy has also funded Russian orphanages, which have had children from Ukraine in their how do you call it, orphanages? Yeah. Which is, in my opinion, something that should be investigated, because you could be complicit in a war crime and a genocidal crime as well, depending on, of course, how those funds were used. But the whole thing is being investigated, because in Norway you need to, first of all, make it public who gave you the money as a political party, and you're not allowed to receive substantial funds from abroad for campaigns. So the question is, where did this money come from, right? But in the end, this is just another proof that there is Russian obvious influence happening in most European countries right now. This is the first case of this kind we've seen in Norway, though, and I would say that it's to a degree alarming, but the reaction of the society here was very comforting, because it got an absolute fail by the Norwegian population. Everyone that I know reacted very, very negatively towards, first of all, giving these guys space in the media, and also people are saying things like, are these people Russian agents? They should be investigated, etc. So I would say that the Norwegian opinion got an A+. The Norwegian television a fail. They completely failed. They should have never invited these people to the debate program, because they don't understand Russian propaganda. Their whole aim is to create division and twist the narrative. And of course, on this debate program, these guys didn't want to talk about Russia and Ukraine. They tried to twist the narrative over to NATO bombing children in Gaza. So, yeah.
It's crazy to me, like, in a lot of countries, this type of propaganda could work, right? Like, if you go to Italy, it's like their government's pretty broke. Like, you know, there's a lot of people. The social welfare net's not super strong. It's obviously, you know, it's still Europe, but like, you know, in Italy, this type of argument I think would resonate with a lot of people. Like, I don't want to say understandably, but like somewhat understandably, right? But Norway is like, number one, I don't think anyone in the world would think of Norway as having like a weak welfare state, right? Like Norway has some of the best welfare programs in the world. It's not like Norway is just letting people die in the streets. Number two, like Norway has a giant pile of money that my understanding is they're not spending because they're worried about inflation. In other words, it's not like it's not like giving money to Ukraine means you're taking money out of Norwegian people's pockets. You're giving money to Ukraine from a giant pile of money that you have, in large part because gas prices went up because everyone's buying your gas because of what's going on with Ukraine, right? Like, so there is no real trade-off here between Norway helping Ukraine and welfare, you know, increases for Norwegians. If you guys wanted to do both right now, you literally could. It's a false dichotomy completely, right?
Yeah, it's completely, you know, it has no logic. The money that Norway is giving to Ukraine is not being taken from other budgets in the state budget. It's basically increased spending from the sovereign wealth fund. Those money would have never been taken to be spent on welfare in Norway because of those reasons you mentioned. That we're trying to keep we're trying to keep the flow of money from oil and gas into the Norwegian economy to a maximum of 2%, and that's to avoid inflation. So yeah, but the thing is that they're just aiming first of all towards people who are ignorant towards these kind of things, but the main goal here was just to create, you know, some fuzz and get some spotlight on this party, which no one knows of. I think most people in Norway did not know of the existence of this party before they had this campaign, and they achieved at least awareness, right? But it's a very classical Russian propaganda. They use this whole peace thing. They have the peace dough in their party logo. You'll find exactly the same thing in Italy and probably other European countries as well. But it's just
put it in the metro where the workers go to their factories.
Yeah, I mean, thing is, it's just a Russian propaganda playbook, copy paste thing. It's nothing new. There's no real ingenious plot behind this thing. It's very simple-minded thing for simple people, in my opinion.
One last question about this, Erlend. What is the little anthropomorphic ticket man saying? Dukan abonere pa 30 daggers per blah.
Yeah, that's the transport company saying that you can subscribe for your 30-day tickets in the app.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, I think does anyone have any other stuff they want to talk about with Norway's crazy party? All right. Well, oh, hello, Mr. Daniel. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Daniela is here. Daniela, is this something that you recognize from Italy? I think Daniela is sleeping.
I guess we'll hear from Daniela later.
I'm not sleeping. I'm not a Norwegian 48 years old.
Who do you call 48-year-old?
You.
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry, 58.
You sound so disgusted.
Anyway, sorry guys. I was not at the computer. Good evening to everyone. And I was listening to the news from Norway. Nice to see a very clean subway.
Good evening. So yeah, I think we can go ahead and move to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, you can throw them in chat. Real quick, Erlend. So I've been doing some stuff over the last couple weeks. First off, I'll mention we had a little bit of a shift in our content strategy on YouTube. So we should mention, like, we haven't had the best luck with our like marketing strategy or whatever you want to call it on YouTube. Number one, we originated on Twitter and we were like kind of doing things on Twitter for a while, and then we came to YouTube later. So by the time we arrived on YouTube, like Ukraine as a topic had already been kind of passed over, like other stuff had taken over. So we really missed out on that initial bump of like people really focused on Ukraine and tuning in. And then the other issue was that we were showing things Russia was doing to Ukraine, and YouTube was like, hey, you guys are pretty violent, we don't like that. And we were basically getting flagged every video with like, you showed an explosion, like you're a violent people, we don't like you. So we managed to squeak by just because we had the absolute like loyalty of like 100 plus people are just like, we love Tochnyi, we don't care how bad YouTube thinks you are. And they carried us through. But we've managed to, I think, mostly sort all that stuff out. Like, we've been on YouTube for a while. We've, tried to make some good relationships with people here. We've mostly, I think we've stopped getting flagged altogether, but we've gotten it down from like every stream. It's probably going to take us a little while to like get whatever naughty points we have like down, but I think we're doing okay there. But I think the final pillar of our content strategy we needed to change was that we were doing the live broadcast, this show, and then we were chopping that up and we were doing like videos of all the different segments as like the actual YouTube videos. And it seems like what was happening in terms of like how YouTube works is YouTube wants our subscribers to click a video and watch it. And if they click that video and watch it, they go, oh, that means other people probably want to watch it. And then they'll recommend it to other people. But because a lot of you tuned into the stream, you guys know like, oh, I already saw that. So you didn't click it. So that means like YouTube is just like, what is this? I can't do anything with this. And they just let it die. So we decided to stop doing the like chopped up segments as video uploads, at least as an experiment. And we're only going to do like original content for videos. I'm going to try to get one out like once a week, and maybe we'll try to do a little more than that. So the last 2 weeks, I've been having little discussions with Mr. Stanimir, who is a expert on the Russian economy, all things Russian economy, reads all the local reports, really has a good understanding of like how everything works in Russia economically. So it really reminds me of, I feel like his boy assistant. I don't know anything about economics. I know very little about Russia. I know a few things. I took some university classes, but I'm by no means an expert. So anyway, I'd recommend those. Check them out. I really think Stanimir is worth hearing about in terms of his topics that he's interested in. And we'll do our best. One thing, Colby has a lot of good ideas, and he said we should ask the listeners and the viewers, like, what do they want to see? So if you guys have any ideas for me about like what you want me to cover in the midweek segments, we're calling it Tochnyi Updates or Tochnyi Midweek Update. If you guys have any recommendations for the midweek updates, you feel free to leave a comment or put them in chat, whatever. There's that. The other thing is Mr. Stanimir also published an article for our website, Tochnyi.info, and it's about the Russian automotive sector. So it's a bit of a deeper dive if you want to maybe listen to that video. And if you're interested in what you heard Stanimir talking about, he has a much more well-sourced and well-explained article that he published on our website about what's going on in Russia with the car industry. It's like, I don't know, not all, it's definitely not good news for the Russian car industry, but it's not all bad news either. So I think it's worth understanding how it works. There's that. So head on over to Tochnyi.info, check out Stanimir's article. Erlend, do we have any other stuff we should promote?
No, I wanted to bring up the same thing.
Cool.
Stanimir did an absolutely An excellent deep dive into the Russian car and automotive industry, and it's about loaves as well. So, check it out.
Loaf update.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're really lucky to have Stanimir. He's such a knowledgeable he's such a fountain of knowledge about the Russian economy. I feel so under-equipped to interview him about things, but I'll do my best. But yeah, Chad, if you guys have any requests for Stanimir, for me, or for anyone else at Tochnyi, let us know. I would also just very briefly plug Artem's article, which came out a few weeks ago, and the interview we did with Come Back Alive about the Dronefall project and Artem's work. Very, very cool interview. Really lucky to have Come Back Alive come on and explain in really clear detail how the program works and how it's been so effective. So if you want to check out that video interview we did in our stream, what was that, 2 weeks ago, Erlend?
I think it's 3 weeks ago now.
Oof. How time flies.
No, yeah, it says stream 2 weeks ago, but I think that's I think it is 3 weeks almost.
Yeah, but yeah, check that out. It's a very good interview. Really interesting stuff. Very unusual for Come Back Alive to, that's not quite the right word, but I'm going with it. Very unusual for Come Back Alive to do an interview in English to an English-speaking audience. So if you're curious about some of the work they've been doing as of late, definitely check that out. All right, Erlend, I think I've given chat enough time and you enough time to gather the questions. You got any questions for our illustrious panel?
Well, we did one question, but Joe followed up on that question. So his first question was about the Iskander, right? And then he followed up with another one, which he didn't get to talk about. And he asked a follow-up, so is it still a matter of seed deed? I guess, Colby, if you want to continue answering that to Joe.
I'm not sure that I understand what the question is specifically asking.
Well,
yeah, seed and dead are for people who don't know, the ability of aircraft.
Destruction of enemy air defenses, destruction of enemy air defenses.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit separate. The capability of shooting down a ballistic missile isn't necessarily so well related with seed and deed.
Yeah, I'm not understanding with the context of the question. So if they want to workshop that and reframe that, then maybe I can help them out.
Yeah. And then the next question is from Kellen. I saw that Raytheon/Rheinmetall started a joint venture, and Ukraine is in talks with Raytheon to do the same. Are there any updates on these talks? How long does it take to get production online?
Well, there's a huge number of different Western firms that have joint ventures with Ukrainian defense companies. So I don't have anything specific to share on any of these different ones. Again, there's an awful lot of them. So if people have very specific questions about specific projects, they're welcome to submit those. But there's nothing in particular that I would highlight. In broad terms, I would just say that there are lots of challenges still in the Ukrainian defense industry, despite there's been massive progress, but there are still massive challenges as well. And there's still a very significant issue with financial resourcing. So already the Ukrainians are saying they have quite a bit of untapped production capacity that is just not being funded. They don't have money to buy what could theoretically be produced. So this is why it is so important for very wealthy countries in Europe and elsewhere in the world to provide more direct financial assistance to Ukraine. And coming back to the topic of Norway and their sovereign wealth fund, they could just be investing in these sort of joint ventures. It doesn't even need to be just grant assistance. Norway can tap its wealth fund to invest in the joint ventures that Norwegian firms already have with Ukraine, and that would be a way to finance Ukraine's defense industry, aside from just providing loans or grant financial assistance to the government of Ukraine so that can parcel that money out to its state-owned defense enterprises. So that's a big problem, lack of money, and then there's still very significant management and culture problems within Ukraine's, particularly on the state-owned side. There's also private Ukrainian companies, which I would say are probably actually doing better overall in terms of scaling up, but a lot of the more important high-end development projects are contained on the state-owned side. This is something where it'd be helpful to have John, if we could get him to pay us a visit, because he's much more familiar with the overall landscape of Ukraine's defense industry than I am. But I'll just reiterate again, in broad terms, there's a lot of different joint ventures. Money remains a problem. Management problems on the Ukrainian side remain an issue. And hopefully we'll see some of the sort of key projects around ammunition production make some further headway in the next year to come.
Yeah, thank you.
Someone asked if there's any, like, if they've identified and sanctioned anyone from Fancy Bear. To my knowledge, they've done that to a couple of like really high level guys in Russian military intelligence and the GRU. But like as far as like the rank and file guys, I don't really think that they've managed to like super identify like low level people on the team or anything like that. It's mostly just the really high level guys who are officially already in Russian intelligence that are coordinating the group. Anything else, Erlend?
Yeah, when nobody has any other questions, I just want to address the actual first question, which you probably missed. It's for me. Just wondered what happened to Gao. No, Germany will no longer publish aid. Yeah, it's a shitty situation, not gonna lie. I don't think it's a good decision, not just for my sake, but in general, it's a bad decision. I mean, you have to imagine that public pressure was the reason Germany made the military assistance public in the first place. We started with not providing any information on military aid. Then we had public pressure. Then we announced our stuff. Now we're going back to not. I don't know. I don't get this logic, to be honest. But hey, his decision. He want to fuck German publicity. He can do though. For me, I'm not only covering military aid. Of course, it's affecting my project and my reporting very much. Now there are a lot of infographics which I can't update anymore. Most of the stuff isn't getting announced anymore. I will keep doing what I can do. I see that it's now even more important that I'm doing this. They managed to give my project my military database to say the biggest credibility possible. There's nothing out there anymore which is more credible than me, because the list of the website of the federal government doesn't get updated anymore. But yeah, I'm still reporting about humanitarian aid. I'm still reporting about all the footage I'm gathering about the city partnerships, about economical aid, about joint ventures, about progress of the German industry in relation to Ukraine. I mean, this stuff doesn't change, right? It's just that part of the assistance or part of my regular daily work, the military aid part is being cut a lot. But apart from that, I'm still here. I'm not going to vanish.
We'd miss you too much if you vanished.
I'm out. Bye.
Well, I think that's about it. Do we have any final questions before we wrap it up, guys?
I don't think there are any questions, but I wanted to mention, and I'll try to pull the video up as well, that Ukraine, specifically Gur, did a pretty significant strike on, or I would say that the significance is because of the range and the target. It's not like a huge strike, but it's target-wise, but it's because of the means. So by some sort of FPV drone, and also the range is very, very important. I'll see if I can show this. So they doesn't work. Okay, 1 sec. Well, this is the where it hits, and as you can see, this is far from the front lines, and it's presumably done by some sort of FPV drone, or at least a drone which gives the operator a video feed. How do I do this now? Okay, 1 sec. But it's around 50 kilometers from the front line, and that's a, you know, with a normal FPV drone, you're lucky if you get 25-30 kilometers range, and then the warhead is probably not significant, but 50 kilometers is it's considerable, especially because you can control the drone all the way to the target. So I hope we're going to see more of those. 1 second, I'll try and get the video up.
Did Gik geolocate it?
I'm not sure who did, but someone in Andrew's crew did. So there. And YouTube, please don't be mad at this. They shouldn't.
Nobody died.
No one fell asleep during this video that
Just
we
a
know
Minecraft.
of.
Just Minecraft. YouTube.
Yeah.
There is no fire, absolutely. It's smoke.
Yeah.
Thomas the Tank Engine is just happy.
But I mean, this is something that shouldn't be it shouldn't go unnoticed. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, it's a mystery. It's for now an outlier, but hopefully we'll see a pattern in the future that might tell us that FPV drones, those little guys, are the Ukrainians have somehow worked some magic to get them all the way down there. Because as you said, it's maybe 20-30 kilometers is the typical range of those guys.
Yep. I'm just trying to get there. So you see, like, let's say to the actual front lines, it's about 50 kilometers. But if you go where you typically would control a drone from, it's around 55 kilometers. Significant.
Is the strike, Erlend, on the new rail system that we covered 1 year ago?
I think those rails they already existed, but they possibly utilize those new rails that connect Rostov and Mariupol, and Tokmak. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The strike was quite far to the west of where we saw that construction. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say, Daniele, other than this?
No, I'm here mostly for the Q&A in case there is any question, but I think this week is quiet.
Are we still putting 3 p.m. New York time? That's my question.
You know, I can tell you how this happened. You know, we duplicate the stream. We forget about to change the what's in the stream description, and we just duplicate it from week to week and forget it week to week. It's simple as that.
Classic Tochnyi. All right, we'll do our best. We're sorry about that. We messed up New York time a lot. I don't know what the deal with that is, but we'll do our best to correct it. Thank you for pointing it out. If we ever do something silly, please point it out to us. We love you, chat. We appreciate your help keeping us honest. So yeah, I think with that we can wrap things up here over at Tochnyi. We really appreciate, of course, I personally appreciate the whole panel for coming and giving their valuable time every weekend, like they do, to update us on the goings-on with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I, of course, appreciate our wonderful chat and our wonderful audience for coming and learning about what's going on, because obviously I think it's a very important issue of our day. So thank you, chat, for all of your great questions and your support and your views and your likes and your subscribes and your ringing the bell, the YouTube bell. We appreciate all that stuff you guys do to support us, spreading the word about us, all that stuff. It helps us out. If you could, or if you want to, you can check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. That's where we do our social media updates. And we also have that great website with cool maps like the one Erlend just showed you at Tochnyi.info. It's got all of our articles and some interactive maps with various data on them. So yeah, check out our website, Tochnyi.info. And with that, I will conclude this week's broadcast of Tochnyi. Check out our video released either on Tuesday, probably Wednesday, for a midweek update. But most importantly, we'll be broadcasting on Sunday at 2100 Kyiv time, like we did today, in a week from now. So we'll see everyone at 2100 Kyiv time next Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава.
Heroyan Slava.
On behalf of the brave.